It was a regular Saturday night. Sarah, my girlfriend of 2 years, and I were sitting on the couch watching some random movie. We started chatting about different things, celebrities, friends, and then, for some reason, the conversation shifted to looks. It seemed harmless at first until Sarah casually said, "You know, your brother Jake is really handsome." I didn't think much of it at first. My brother Jake was always the outgoing, athletic type. Girls loved him, and I always thought it was funny how he got all the attention. But then she said something that stopped me in my tracks. If I had met him first, I'd probably be dating him instead. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I couldn't believe what she'd just said. My own girlfriend, the woman I loved, had just told me that she found my brother more attractive. And not just attractive. She outright admitted she would have chosen him over me. My brain was spinning. Was she joking? Was this some twisted way of being honest? I forced a smile and laughed it off, but deep down it stung. The next day we were supposed to have dinner with my family, including Jake. I didn't know how I was going to act around him. Every time I looked at Sarah, all I could think about was what she'd said. I didn't tell her it was bothering me because I wasn't sure how to bring it up without sounding insecure. At dinner, I was on edge the whole time. Jake, being his usual charming self, was cracking jokes and making everyone laugh. Sarah seemed quiet, but I couldn't help but notice the way she glanced at him a few times. Maybe I was overthinking it, but I couldn't shake the feeling. It was as if her comment had planted a seed of doubt in my mind, and now every little thing she did felt suspicious. By the end of the night, I was exhausted from trying to pretend everything was fine. But in reality, nothing felt fine anymore, and I couldn't let it go. A few days after the dinner, I decided I needed to talk to Sarah about it. We were sitting on the couch again when I brought it up. "So, the other night when you said you'd date Jake if you met him first, what did you mean by that?" Sarah looked at me, slightly annoyed. "It was just a passing thought. Don't overthink it," she said. "Overthink it?" I repeated, trying to keep my cool. "You basically said you'd rather be with my brother." She rolled her eyes. "I'm with you, aren't I? That's what matters. I wasn't trying to hurt you." Her words didn't make me feel any better. If anything, they made it worse. Was she with me just because of timing? It felt like she was brushing off how much her comment had affected me. I sat there, staring at the TV, unsure of what to say next. It was like we were having two completely different conversations. She didn't get why I was upset, and I didn't get how she could be so casual about something that felt like a punch to the gut. That I didn't want to involve Jake in this, but I couldn't hold it in anymore. One night, I asked him to grab a drink with me after work. We went to our usual spot, and after some small talk, I finally told him what had been bothering me. "Sarah said something the other night that's been messing with my head," I said, swirling the beer in my glass. I told him everything, including her comment about dating him if she met him first. Jake looked stunned. "What the hell, man? That's really messed up." He shook his head. "I don't know why she'd say something like that, but for what it's worth, I'd never do that to you. You know that, right?" I nodded, but the doubt was still there. Jake had always been the golden boy, athletic, good-looking, successful. I was used to being compared to him by other people, but hearing it from Sarah was a whole different level of hurt. After my conversation with Jake, I thought things would get better. At least I had his reassurance that he wasn't interested in Sarah. But that didn't change how I felt about her comment. Every time I looked at her, it replayed in my head. It wasn't just the fact that she found Jake attractive. It was the idea that if circumstances were different, she wouldn't even be with me. The tension between Sarah and me started to build. We stopped talking as much, and when we did, it was usually surface-level stuff. I didn't bring up her comment again because I didn't want to seem like I was nagging, but I could feel the distance between us growing. Even when we were in the same room, it felt like we were miles apart. One night, after another awkward dinner where we barely spoke, Sarah finally broke the silence. "Are you still mad about what I said?" I sighed, not really knowing how to answer. "I'm not mad. It's just, I can't stop thinking about it. You saying you'd date my brother if you met him first. Do you even understand how that makes me feel?" She crossed her arms, looking frustrated. "It was a hypothetical. You're blowing this way out of proportion." "Am I?" I snapped. What am I supposed to think? You basically told me you settled for me. That hit a nerve. Sarah's face hardened, and for the first time, I saw real anger in her eyes. You think I settled for you? Wow. Maybe that says more about how you see yourself than how I feel about you. That cut deep. Suddenly, I wasn't just questioning her feelings. I was questioning myself. Was I overreacting? Was I letting my own insecurities ruin what we had? But even with all that self-doubt creeping in, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that maybe there was some truth to her words, and that scared me more than anything. After Sarah's comment, things between us went from bad to worse. We were barely talking, and when we did, it usually ended in an argument. Every time I tried to move on, her words about Jake being more handsome kept creeping back into my mind. I started to wonder if she was right. Was this all about my own insecurities? One night, we were supposed to go to a friend's birthday party together. I had been looking forward to it, thinking maybe getting out and having fun would help ease the tension between us. But just as I was getting ready, Sarah walked into the living room, already dressed to go. I think I'll just go by myself, she said casually, like it was no big deal. I blinked, trying to process her words. By yourself? Why? She shrugged, not meeting my eyes. I don't know. I just need some space. We've been arguing so much, and I think it might be better if I went alone tonight. That was the breaking point. I felt my stomach drop, and I couldn't keep the frustration inside anymore. You're leaving me behind? Again? Again? What are you talking about? She shot back, her eyes narrowing. This. Ever since you made that comment about Jake, it feels like you're pulling away from me, like you're already halfway out the door. Her face softened for a second, but she quickly shook it off. You're making something out of nothing. I just need some time to think. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to beg her to stay, to fix whatever was broken between us. But another part of me was so angry and hurt that I didn't want to give in. So I just stood there, watching her grab her keys and walk out the door, leaving me alone in the apartment. As the door clicked shut, the silence that filled the room was deafening. It was in that moment that I realized we had hit a point of no return. Something had shifted between us, and I wasn't sure if we could ever go back to the way things were before. That night, after Sarah left, I sat on the couch for what felt like hours, just staring at the wall. I could hear the echoes of our argument replaying in my head. It wasn't just about Jake being more handsome anymore. This was about how distant she'd become, how everything seemed to fall apart since that comment. By the time she got home, it was past midnight. I could hear her footsteps as she fumbled with the keys and opened the door. She stepped inside, looking surprised to see me still awake. "You're up?" she asked, her tone indifferent. "Yeah," I replied coldly, not even looking at her. She took off her jacket and threw it over the back of a chair before walking into the kitchen to grab a glass of water. I watched her, waiting for some kind of explanation, maybe even an apology, but none came. She just acted like everything was normal, as if nothing had happened between us. I couldn't hold it in any longer. "You didn't even care that I wasn't there, did you?" I said, my voice low but tense. She turned to face me, sighing heavily. "What do you want me to say, Rob? It was just a party. I needed some space to clear my head." "Space?" I scoffed. "You've been distant for weeks now. You're not just pulling away from me, you're shutting me out. And I don't get it. Is it because of what you said about Jake? Do you actually regret being with me?" Her eyes flickered, but she didn't respond right away. For a moment, I thought I saw guilt flash across her face, but it disappeared as quickly as it came. "You're overthinking everything," she muttered, rubbing her temples. "It's not about Jake. It's about us." "What does that even mean?" I demanded, feeling the frustration building up inside me. She hesitated, then finally spoke. "I don't know if this relationship is what I want anymore." Those words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt like the ground beneath me had been ripped away, leaving me in free fall. This wasn't about Jake being more handsome. It was something much deeper. Something between us was broken, and I wasn't sure if we could fix it. Sarah's words hung in the air like a thick fog. I sat there, frozen, trying to process what she had just said. I don't know if this relationship is what I want anymore. I finally managed to choke out, "What do you mean you don't know? Are you saying you want to break up?" She looked down, avoiding my gaze. "I don't know, Rob. I'm not happy. I've been feeling off for a while, and I think it's time we talked about it." My heart was pounding in my chest. "You're not happy because of Jake, right? Because you think I'm not good enough?" She sighed again. "This isn't about Jake. I shouldn't have even said that in the first place. I was just being stupid. But it's about us, Rob. We've been drifting apart for a while now, and I'm not sure if we're the same people we were when we started dating." Her words stung, but deep down, I knew there was some truth in them. Things hadn't been the same between us for a while. We used to spend every weekend together, talk about everything, laugh until our sides hurt. Lately, though, it felt like we were just going through the motions. It wasn't just her who had changed. I had too, and I hadn't even realized it. But still, hearing her say she wasn't sure about us hurt more than I thought it would. "So, what do you want to do?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I think we need some time apart," she finally said. "Maybe we both need to figure out what we really want." I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. Time apart? That was just code for breaking up, right? But I didn't want to fight her on it. If she wasn't happy, what was the point in forcing it? "Okay," I said after a long pause, my voice cracking slightly. "If that's what you want." She nodded, tears welling up in her eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "I think it's for the best." That night, we didn't say much more. She grabbed a bag and started packing a few things to stay at her friend's place for a while. As I watched her leave, it felt like the end of something, like a door closing on everything we had built together. But in that moment, I also realized that this wasn't just about her. It was about me too. Maybe this time apart would give me the clarity I needed to figure out if this relationship was really worth saving, or if it was time to let go for good. The first few days after Sarah left were rough. The apartment felt empty, way too quiet. I had gotten so used to her being around, her things scattered everywhere, the sound of her humming while she worked on something. Now it was just me, alone with my thoughts. I tried to keep myself busy. I went to the gym, hung out with friends, and even binge-watched a few shows I'd been meaning to catch up on. But no matter what I did, my mind kept drifting back to her. Was she thinking about me too? Or was she feeling relief now that she had some space? A week later, Jake came over to check in on me. I hadn't told him the full story, just that Sarah and I were taking a break. As usual, he was his confident self, strolling in like he owned the place. "So, how you holding up, bro?" Jake asked, leaning back on my couch like he didn't have a care in the world. "I don't know, man. It's weird," I admitted. "I thought I'd feel more, I don't know, angry or something, but it's mostly just empty. Like, I miss her, but I don't know if I miss us." Jake raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" I shrugged. "I mean, maybe she was right. Maybe we've both changed. I don't know if we're really good for each other anymore." Jake stayed quiet for a moment, which was unusual for him. "You really think that? I thought you guys were solid." "We were, but things have been different lately," I said. "I guess I just didn't want to admit it." Jake nodded, and for once, he didn't crack a joke or try to lighten the mood. "You gotta do what's best for you, man. If you're not happy, then maybe this break is a good thing. Gives you both time to figure stuff out." I hated to admit it, but he had a point. Maybe this separation wasn't the worst thing in the world. It hurt, sure, but sometimes things had to fall apart to make room for something better. The days dragged on, and I didn't hear much from Sarah. I didn't want to be the one to reach out first. If this break was about figuring things out, I needed to give her space. But I couldn't stop wondering what she was thinking, if she was feeling the same way, or if she had already made up her mind that this was the end. One night, as I was scrolling through my phone, I noticed a notification from Sarah. My heart jumped. It was just a short message. "We should talk." I didn't know what that meant, but I had a feeling that whatever conversation we were about to have, it was going to change everything. I stared at Sarah's message, my thumb hovering over the screen. "We should talk" could mean anything, but it didn't sound good. I knew there was no point in avoiding it, though. Whatever was coming, it had to happen. After a few moments, I replied, "Sure. When? Tomorrow. Can I come over around 7?" I agreed, and for the rest of the day, I was a nervous wreck. My mind ran through every possible scenario. Was she breaking up with me for good? Was she going to tell me she realized she made a mistake? I couldn't get a grip on what was coming, and it was driving me nuts. The next day, the hours crawled by. I cleaned the apartment, more to keep my mind occupied than because it needed it. By the time 7 p.m. rolled around, I was pacing. When I heard a knock at the door, my heart pounded in my chest. I opened it to find Sarah standing there, looking the same as ever, but something was different. Maybe it was the way she was holding herself, or the tired look in her eyes. She stepped inside, and we exchanged an awkward hello. We sat on the couch, and for a moment, it felt like old times. But I knew we weren't here to reminisce. So, I started breaking the silence. "What's on your mind?" She hesitated, taking a deep breath before speaking. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything that's happened." I nodded, bracing myself for what was coming next. "I realize that I love you, but I don't think I'm in love with you anymore," she said, her voice quiet but steady. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I had been prepared for a breakup, but hearing her say that she wasn't in love with me anymore, that was different. It was a different kind of pain, one that cut deeper. "I don't know when it happened," she continued, "but somewhere along the way we started drifting apart. I think I was trying to hold on because I didn't want to lose what we had. But I don't think it's fair to either of us to keep pretending everything's okay." I swallowed hard, trying to keep my emotions in check. "So what are you saying? You want to end things for good?" She nodded slowly. "Yeah, I think it's the right thing to do. I should have seen it coming, but hearing it out loud still hurt like hell. I had so many questions. Why didn't we try harder? Was there something I could have done differently? But I knew it didn't matter anymore. She had made up her mind, and I had to accept it. "I get it," I said, my voice strained. I guess I kind of saw this coming too." We sat there for a few more minutes, the weight of everything hanging in the air. Then Sarah stood up to leave. There wasn't much more to say. "I'm sorry, Jack," she said quietly as she reached the door. "Yeah," I replied, not sure what else to say. "Me too." And just like that, she was gone. I closed the door behind her, leaning against it as the reality of everything sank in. It was over. This chapter of my life, of our life, had ended. Now I had to figure out where to go from here. The days after Sarah left were a blur. There was this heavy, quiet emptiness that filled the apartment, a silence I wasn't used to. I kept expecting to hear her laugh from the other room or see her shoes by the door, but all of that was gone now. I knew I had to move on, but I didn't know where to start. I felt lost, like someone had pressed pause on my life and I was just stuck in this limbo of emotions. One night, after a particularly long day at work, I found myself scrolling through social media. I saw friends posting about their lives, people getting engaged, moving in together, having kids. It hit me then just how much my life had changed in such a short time. A few weeks ago, I had been one of those people posting pictures of Sarah and me, happy and in love. Now, I didn't even know what my next move was. A message notification popped up. It was Mark, my brother. We hadn't talked much since the whole mess with Sarah, but he had been checking in more lately, making sure I was okay. "How you holding up?" he asked. I stared at the message for a minute before typing back, "I've been better." He responded almost immediately. "Wanna grab a beer tomorrow? Clear your head a bit." I hesitated. The idea of going out, of being social, felt overwhelming. But sitting at home wallowing wasn't doing me any favors either. "Yeah, sure," I typed back. The next evening, we met at a local bar we used to go to in high school. Felt weird being there again, like I was stepping back in time. Mark was already seated at a booth, 2 beers waiting on the table. He waved me over, a knowing look on his face. "Hey man," he said as I sat down. "You look like you've been through the ringer." "Yeah, something like that," I muttered. We spent the next hour catching up, mostly talking about anything but Sarah. It was nice to get a break from thinking about her, from reliving that last conversation in my head over and over again. Eventually, though, Mark brought it up. "So, how's everything with Sarah? You two talked." I sighed, taking a long sip of my beer. "Yeah, she's done. She said she's not in love with me anymore." Mark frowned. "Damn, that's rough. But I mean, did you really see a future with her after everything that went down?" I thought about it for a minute. "I don't know. Maybe I just didn't want to face the reality that it wasn't working." Mark nodded. "It's tough, man, but you've got to start thinking about yourself now. You've got a lot going for you, more than you realize." I appreciated his words, but it was hard to see that in the moment. Still, as we sat there, talking about old memories and laughing about stupid stuff we did as kids, I felt a little lighter. Maybe Mark was right. Maybe it was time to focus on myself for a change. As the night went on, I realized something. Life was still moving forward. Even though everything felt upside down, the world wasn't going to stop for me. I had to pick up the pieces and start moving too. And maybe, just maybe, that wasn't such a bad thing. Over the next few weeks, things began to change, but in small, manageable ways. After that night with Mark, I felt a little more grounded. We started hanging out more, going for drinks, catching a game on TV, or just grabbing dinner at his place. It was nice to reconnect with him, especially after everything that had happened. I hadn't realized just how much I'd isolated myself while I was with Sarah. Work became my main focus, and for once I was okay with that. Throwing myself into projects gave me something productive to do. My boss even noticed and hinted at a possible promotion down the line. I wasn't sure if I was ready for more responsibility, but it felt good to be recognized for something other than my personal life falling apart. Then, out of the blue, I got a message from an old friend, Lily. We hadn't spoken in years, not since college, but she'd seen what happened with Sarah on social media and wanted to reach out. Her message was casual, like she didn't want to overstep, but she also didn't sugarcoat things. "I've been through a breakup like that," she said. "It sucks, but it gets better. Want to grab coffee sometime?" At first, I wasn't sure if I was ready to jump back into socializing with anyone new, but the more I thought about it, the more it felt like a step forward. Lily was an old friend, someone who knew me long before all this relationship drama. So I agreed. We met up a few days later at a cafe downtown. She looked exactly the same, just a little older, a little more polished. It was like no time had passed at all. "Long time no see," she said with a grin as we sat down. We caught up on everything, her job, my job, mutual friends, all the usual stuff. But then, naturally, the conversation shifted to Sarah. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her tone gentle but direct. "I'm doing okay," I said, and I meant it. "It's been rough, but I think I'm starting to move on." Lily nodded. "Good. You deserve better. I always thought you were one of the good ones." Her comment caught me off guard. I wasn't used to hearing that kind of thing anymore, and for a moment I didn't know how to respond. But the conversation moved on, and by the end of the coffee meetup, I felt lighter, like I'd taken another small step in the right direction. Over the next few weeks, we kept in touch. We weren't rushing into anything, just two old friends reconnecting. But it felt good to know that maybe, just maybe, I could move forward without being stuck in the past. As the days turned into weeks, something else became clear. The breakup with Sarah wasn't the end of my story. It was just a chapter. And it was up to me to decide how the rest of it would go. It was a Thursday afternoon when I got the message. My phone buzzed, and when I looked at the screen, I saw Sarah's name. My heart skipped a beat. It had been a few weeks since we'd last spoken, and I didn't expect to hear from her again. "Hey," the message started. "I've been thinking a lot. I know we haven't talked much, but I just wanted to apologize for how everything went down. I've been going through some stuff myself, and I know I wasn't fair to you." I stared at the message for a while, unsure of how to respond. After everything, after she'd admitted she thought my brother was better looking than me and how she humiliated me, why was she reaching out now? Was this some kind of attempt at getting back together? Or was it just guilt talking? I put my phone down for a moment, trying to clear my head. I didn't want to rush into any decision, but part of me wanted to respond, maybe just to get closure. Another part of me felt like I didn't owe her anything anymore. I'd come so far already, and the thought of opening that door again made my stomach churn. Still, I decided to reply, but I kept it short and direct. I appreciate the apology. It's been a tough time, and I think I need space to move on. I hope you understand. I sent it and immediately felt a little relief. I didn't want to drag out the drama. I wasn't looking for some big emotional confrontation. I was over that. But then, just as I put my phone down, it buzzed again. It was Sarah again. I get it, she wrote. I just wanted to say one more thing. I think you're a great guy. You've always been a good person, and I've realized that I wasn't in the right headspace before. I'm really sorry for everything. I took a deep breath. Something in her message seemed genuine, but I wasn't sure if that was enough to fix everything. After everything she put me through, was an apology really enough? I couldn't deny that I'd felt hurt, betrayed, and humiliated. The relationship wasn't just about the looks or the things she said, it was about trust. And that trust had been broken. As I sat there, staring at the message, I realized something important. I didn't need Sarah to validate me. Her apology didn't change anything about how far I'd come or where I was headed. I had to take control of my life and not let her dictate my happiness or self-worth. I typed back, I think it's best for both of us if we don't talk anymore. I need to keep moving forward. I hit send, and this time I felt a sense of finality. No more second-guessing. No more looking back. This was my life now, and I was done with the past. I didn't need Sarah to be a part of it anymore. The next few days were peaceful. I continued hanging out with Mark and Lily, working on my career, and focusing on myself. Things weren't perfect, but I was in a much better place. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful about it. The door to my past was finally closed. And as for Sarah, well, she'd have to figure out her own life, just like I was figuring out mine. A week had passed since I had shut the door on Sarah. I had been focusing on myself, working, hitting the gym, and hanging out with my friends. Life was starting to feel good again. But, as fate would have it, something unexpected happened that threw everything off course. One Saturday afternoon, I was at a local bar with Mark, grabbing a few drinks and chatting about everything and nothing. We were having a good time, laughing about old times and catching up, when my phone buzzed again. I glanced at the screen and froze. It was a message from none other than my brother. Hey man, can we talk? Something came up. It felt a bit odd because we hadn't really had a serious conversation in a while, aside from the usual quick chats. But this sounded more urgent. I quickly responded, yeah, what's up? He replied almost instantly. It's about Sarah. I think you need to know something. She's been telling people some stuff about you. I think you deserve to hear it from me. I didn't know what to think. My mind raced. Why was he suddenly messaging me about Sarah? And why now? He had always been supportive, but this felt different. The whole situation was starting to feel like a bad soap opera. Just come over to my place. I'll explain when you get here, my brother texted. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go, but something in me told me to go see what this was about. Mark could tell something was off as soon as I stood up to leave. You good? He asked. Yeah, I just gotta go handle something, I said, trying to sound casual. But I knew this was going to be one of those moments that could change everything. I arrived at my brother's apartment about 20 minutes later. He let me in, looking a bit uncomfortable. I could tell this wasn't something he was eager to discuss. Sit down, he said, leading me to the couch. This isn't easy for me to say, but I think it's something you need to hear. Just tell me, I said, impatient now, but also curious about what he had to say. Okay, he sighed. I've been talking to Sarah, and she's been telling people things about you. Stuff that's not true. She told some of our mutual friends that you've been making her feel uncomfortable and that you were always controlling. That's why she broke things off. I didn't want to believe it at first, but now I think she's just trying to save face. I was in complete shock. What the hell was he talking about? Sarah had never said anything like that to me. And now she was trying to paint me as some kind of bad guy? Are you serious? I asked. Why would she say that? I was nothing but good to her. I don't know, man, he replied. But I wanted you to know. I don't believe it for a second, but you need to hear it. It might be why she's been reaching out to you. Maybe she's trying to play both sides. The betrayal stung. Sarah wasn't just trying to get back into my life. She was trying to change the narrative. She was rewriting our history to make herself the victim. I didn't want to get involved, but I had to let you know, my brother added, his expression serious. I sat there for a moment, processing everything. This was worse than I thought. Sarah had crossed a line, and now I had to decide how to handle it. Do I confront her? Do I let it go and move on? For the first time, I realized that not only was Sarah no longer a part of my life, she was actively trying to sabotage the version of me I had worked so hard to rebuild. I took a deep breath, knowing that this was far from over. But I wasn't going to let her win. The next few days were a whirlwind. My brother's revelation about Sarah had shaken me, but it also gave me the clarity I needed. I wasn't just dealing with someone who was petty or dishonest. I was dealing with someone who had tried to manipulate me, my brother, and the whole situation. It wasn't just about the comment she made about my brother being more handsome anymore. It was about a pattern of behavior that I couldn't ignore. I thought long and hard about my next move. A part of me wanted to confront Sarah. I wanted to yell at her, demand answers, and show her that I wasn't going to let her paint me as the villain. But another part of me, the wiser part, knew that confronting her would only give her the attention she craved. It was clear now that I had to let go. For good. I decided that I needed to clear the air with her. Not for her benefit, but for mine. I needed to move on completely, without any lingering doubts or unfinished business. So, I sent Sarah a message. We need to talk, but not in the way you think. I know what you've been saying, and I'm done. Don't contact me again. I knew that was probably the last message I would ever send her. And honestly, I was okay with that. I didn't need to have one final confrontation or closure. My closure was taking control of the situation, deciding my own narrative, and walking away without needing her approval or validation. A few hours later, my phone buzzed with a response. It was Sarah. You don't know the whole story. I was trying to protect you. You should be mad at me, but please, let's talk about this. I didn't even bother reading the rest. It didn't matter anymore. The truth was out, and it was time to move forward. I deleted her message. Then, for the first time in a long while, I felt free. No more second-guessing myself. No more wondering what I could have done differently. I had made the decision to let her go, and I wasn't going to backtrack now. The next few weeks were a new chapter in my life. I focused on rebuilding myself, rediscovering the things that made me happy, and strengthening the relationships that really mattered, like with my friends and family. I even started dating again. It was strange at first, but I quickly realized that there were people out there who appreciated me for who I truly was, without any of the baggage or drama that Sarah had tried to drag me into. I had learned the hard way, but I wasn't going to let someone else dictate my self-worth. Took time, but I had grown from this experience. And in the end, I realized that sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is walk away. As for Sarah, she kept trying to reach out every now and then, but I had already made my decision. She wasn't a part of my story anymore, and that was exactly how I wanted it. Looking back, I saw it all clearly now. My brother, the comments, the manipulation, it had all been a wake-up call. I was finally in control of my life again, and I wasn't going to let anyone take that away from me.